Today, President Obama stepped into that particular page of the history books when he held his first press conference after being reelected. He waited longer than any of his modern predecessors to hold the first post-reelection press conference, but he did follow the tradition when he convened the press corps today, and he did so in the midst of the controversy over the sudden resignation of his CIA chief, who's also the former commander of the Iraq War and the Afghanistan War, the highest-profile military and intelligence figure in the country. So David Petraeus' old job of running the CIA is now suddenly an available job in this administration. And the same scandal that created that vacancy at the CIA has also now touched the current top U.S. commanding general in Afghanistan, whose successor for that job is due to have his confirmation hearings in Washington tomorrow. Well, today, at his first post-reelection press conference, the president largely deflected questions about who he would be appointing to all the top jobs in the administration for his second term. He deflected those questions today with one notable exception. One notable exception that just about took the roof off that room today. Did you see this?
Senator John McCain and Senator Lindsey Graham both said today that they want to have Watergate-style hearings on the attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, and said that if you nominate Susan Rice to be Secretary of State, they will do everything in their power to block her nomination. As Senator Graham said, he simply doesn't trust Ambassador Rice after what she said about Benghazi. I'd like your reaction to that, and would those threats deter you from making a nomination like that?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to comment at this point on various nominations that I'll put forward to fill out my cabinet for the second term. Those are things that are still being discussed. But let me say specifically about Susan Rice. She has done exemplary work. She has represented the United States and our interests in the United Nations with skill and professionalism and toughness and grace. As I've said before, she made an appearance at the request of the White House in which she gave her best understanding of the intelligence that had been provided to her. If Senator McCain and Senator Graham and others want to go after somebody, they should go after me. And I'm happy to have that discussion with them. But for them to go after the UN ambassador, who had nothing to do with Benghazi, and was simply making a presentation based on intelligence that she had received, and to besmirch her reputation, is outrageous. And, you know, we're after an election now. I think it is important for us to find out exactly what happened in Benghazi, and I'm happy to cooperate in any ways that Congress wants. We have provided every bit of information that we have, and we will continue to provide information, and we've got a full-blown investigation, and all that information will be disgorged to Congress. And I don't think there's any debate in this country that when you have 4 Americans killed, that's a problem. And we've got to get to the bottom of it, and there needs to be accountability. We've got to bring those who carried it out to justice. They won't get any debate from me on that. But when they go after the UN ambassador, apparently because they think she's an easy target, then they've got a problem with me. And should I choose, if I think that she would be the best person to serve America in the capacity of the State Department, then I will nominate her. That's not a determination that I've made yet.
Pin drop. If you are wondering where you have seen this kind of thing before, not just this argument, but that look on his face, the closest thing to temper that we see from this cool, calm, collected president. We saw this once before in a moment that would have been the most important moment in the presidential debates this year, were it not for what happened right immediately after that moment.
Governor, if you want to reply quickly to this, please. I certainly do.
I think it's interesting. The president just said something which is that on the day after the attack, he went to the Rose Garden and said that this was an act of terror.
That's what I said.
You said in the Rose Garden, the day after the attack, it was an act of terror. It was not a spontaneous demonstration. Is that what you're saying?
Please proceed, Governor.
I want to make sure we get that for the record, because it took the president 14 days before he called the attack in Benghazi an act of terror.
Get the transcript.
He did, in fact, sir. So let me call it an act of terror.
Can you say that a little louder, Candy?
We all remember that because of what happened at the end there, right? Mr. Romney's faceplant failed attempt at calling the president out for something that the conservative media said he had done that he had not actually done. But what happened right before that at that debate was President Obama defending Susan Rice and Hillary Clinton directly by their titles and condemning as offensive Mitt Romney trying to say that that attack was being covered up or that the country was being misled about it. That is what we saw today, again, on full blast at the president's first press conference after being reelected. The Beltway common wisdom on this is that President Obama is picking a fight with his Secretary of State nomination if he does pick Susan Rice for that position. And when the Beltway accuses you of picking a fight, they always mean, oh, no, you shouldn't do that. But seeing the president up there talking about this today with such fire in the belly, and seeing how he did that as well in the debate when the same subject came up, I think this might be something more than just picking a fight. There's plenty of reason to be angry, to be concerned about the attack on the U.S. consulate in Libya. It is very much worth being angry at the people who carried out that attack, right? It is worth talking about. It's worth even being angry about why American preparations for something like this happening at an American diplomatic facility were not enough to protect the lives of the 4 Americans who died, including the ambassador. Those are the questions the congressional committees looking at that attack are going to be asking tomorrow when those hearings convene, including expected testimony from David Petraeus himself, who is now the former head of the CIA. But what does not follow rationally from the anger and concern over the attack in September is the John McCain and conservative media assaults on the American ambassador to the United Nations, Susan Rice, who had nothing to do with the attack or with anything about preparing consular facilities for potential security problems, but who John McCain has nevertheless been furiously denouncing as unqualified and as a person who doesn't understand things well enough like he does. He went on CBS today and called her not very bright, which you will recall is the exact same thing that John Sununu said about President Obama in his role on the Mitt Romney campaign. He called him not very bright. The president's response to John McCain's attempted destruction of Susan Rice and his pledge to block her nomination and McCain's pledge to block her nomination as Secretary of State, the president's response to that has not been to say, I don't want to talk about Benghazi, nothing to see here. His reaction has been to say, yes, we should talk about what happened in Libya. But the idea that Susan Rice is going to be your scapegoat here when she has done nothing wrong, that is the part that's nonsense. And I'm not going to go along with that. And you're not using something made up about her to destroy a career that is still on its way up. I mean, picking a fight is what they're calling this in the Beltway media, right? Picking a fight would be installing Paul Krugman at Treasury. Picking a fight would be like picking Eliot Spitzer for Attorney General, right? Picking a fight would be moving Camp David to Hawaii so the president could get in some more beach time. Picking Susan Rice for Secretary of State, if the president decides he wants to do that, would not be picking a fight. It would be more drawing a line in the sand, saying starting now, starting day one of this second term, which I just won in a big national election that you lost. Starting now, we will fight about policy, we will fight about differences of opinion, we will fight about priorities, but we will not have any more fights that are based on nonsense that the right made up to entertain itself. If we have a real beef, we will fight it out. But when it is made up, like the John McCain crusade against Susan Rice, that made up stuff will no longer be entertained at the level of national policy.